Toronto Maple Leafs are on the verge of a major decision. Could Sam Bennett be the piece that finally takes the team beyond their playoff frustrations? And more importantly, would Toronto be willing to pay the price to make it a reality? Bennett has already proven his worth. After inconsistent years with the Calgary Flames, he found new life with the Florida Panthers, becoming a clutch player in critical moments. His presence in the playoffs wasn't just noticeable, it was essential to last season's championship run. Now, with his entry into free agency approaching, interest in his services is heating up, and the Leafs are watching closely. But here's the dilemma. Can Toronto realistically afford to bring him in without compromising their core? With around $27.5 million in cap space, every decision must be meticulously calculated. Bennett's arrival could mean sacrifices. Could players like Mitch Marner or John Tavares be on their way out to make room? Moreover, the Leafs aren't alone in this race. With teams like the Boston Bruins and New York Rangers eyeing the market, Bennett's value could skyrocket, making him an expensive gamble for any team. Bennett's impact on the Leafs. What would he bring to Toronto? Physicality, intensity, and a playoff DNA that the team has been desperately searching for. His versatility as a center and winger would give head coach Sheldon Keefe more options, making the attack more formidable. But the big question is he worth the heavy investment, knowing that the defense also needs reinforcements? If Toronto decides to go all in, this move could define the franchise's future for years to come. A contract above $8 million per season for a player like Bennett could mean sacrificing depth in other critical areas. My opinion as a Leafs fan, I would love to see Bennett in blue and white. He has exactly what the team has lacked in decisive moments: intensity, resilience, and the ability to shine under pressure. But at what cost? If the Leafs can secure his signing without compromising the team's structure, it would be a fantastic move. Otherwise, I'd rather see that money invested in defensive reinforcements and defensive depth. Now, I want to hear from you, Leafs fans. Would Sam Bennett be the piece that finally pushes the team further in the playoffs? Or would the cost be too high? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to Leafs News Fan Report so you don't miss any offseason updates. If Toronto really wants to take a step forward, this offseason will be crucial. The decision to go after Bennett cannot be made impulsively. The NHL market can be treacherous, and paying a high price for a player can have long-term consequences. If the Leafs go all in on him, are they ready to deal with the repercussions? The Marner factor and the salary cap question. If Bennett truly becomes a priority for the Leafs, Mitch Marner's future could be in question. The winger is on an expensive contract, and while he is one of the most talented players on the team, his playoff production hasn't always justified the investment. If Toronto is willing to clear cap space to bring in Bennett, trading Marner could be a real possibility. But would that trade make sense? Marner is an elite playmaker, someone who can create plays that few in the league can. Meanwhile, Bennett is a more physical player, an agitator who thrives in big moments. Swapping one for the other would completely change the Leafs' identity, and fans would have to be prepared for that shift. And that's not all. If Toronto heavily invests in Bennett, how would that impact future contract extensions for players like Austin Matthews and William Nylander? The Leafs front office would need to find a delicate balance between strengthening the team now and ensuring that their window for success remains open in the coming years. Is it worth the risk? Looking at the recent playoffs, it's clear that the Leafs need players like Bennett. The team has struggled to impose its physical game in crucial moments and has been eliminated by teams that can elevate their level when it matters most. But paying over $8 million per season for a player like Bennett means sacrificing other areas of the team. Is Toronto ready for that commitment? If the Leafs management believes he can be the difference maker that finally pushes the team to the Stanley Cup Finals, then maybe the risk is worth it. But if there are doubts about his long-term impact, it might be wiser to look for more balanced alternatives in the market. What's next? The offseason is just beginning, and the Leafs' next moves will be decisive. If Bennett does become a free agent, we can expect Toronto to be among the interested teams. But the question is, will they be willing to pay the price? Now I want to hear from you, Leafs fans. Do you think Sam Bennett is the right name to change the franchise's destiny? Or should Toronto focus on strengthening other positions? Leave your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Leafs News Fan Report for all the latest Leafs updates this offseason. As a Leafs fan, there's no doubt that Sam Bennett would bring something the team has lacked for years: physical intensity, a playoff mentality, and that irritating presence that opponents hate to face. Every season, we see Toronto dominate the regular season, only to be outmatched in the playoffs by teams that play a more physical and relentless style of hockey. Bennett represents exactly that type of player. However, the big question for me is the cost. Paying over $8 million for a player who, while valuable, isn't a high-end offensive producer could be too big of a risk. We still have to resolve Mitch Marner's situation and decide whether it's worth sacrificing him or another key player to fit Bennett into the roster. If the Leafs management is smart, they will try to negotiate a more reasonable contract to avoid compromising the team's future. If it were up to me, I'd love to see Bennett wearing the blue and white of the Leafs, but only if the price makes sense. If it's a matter of overspending and weakening other areas of the team, like the defense, which clearly needs reinforcements, then I'd prefer Toronto to explore more balanced options in the market. What does the future hold for the Leafs? The offseason will be crucial for the Leafs, and every decision could shape the franchise's direction for years to come. The arrival of Sam Bennett would certainly add an element that has been missing in recent playoff runs, but the cost of that acquisition needs to be carefully evaluated. If the front office decides to invest in him, it means Toronto is betting on playoff mentality above all else. This could be a necessary move since we've seen the Leafs repeatedly fail when the game becomes more physical and intense. However, if the strategy doesn't work out, the team could end up financially strained for years, limiting their flexibility for future signings and contract renewals. Moreover, there's the adaptation factor. Would Bennett fit well into Sheldon Keefe's system? Would he be able to maintain his productivity in a high-pressure environment like Toronto? Playing for the Leafs is not like playing for the Florida Panthers. The media, the fans, and the expectations are relentless. What works in one market may not work in another, and that's a risk that cannot be ignored. Other alternatives in the market. If Toronto fails to land Bennett, the front office should look at other options. There are players available in the market who could bring intensity and physical presence without requiring a massive contract. Additionally, reinforcing the defense might be a more sensible choice. What's the point of adding a physical player if the team continues to allow easy goals in the playoffs? Perhaps investing in a solid defenseman makes more sense than spending all the cap space on a single forward. My final take as a fan. If the Leafs can bring in Bennett at a fair value without sacrificing roster balance, I'm all for it. He has the exact profile the team needs to finally overcome their playoff barrier and become a true Stanley Cup contender. On the other hand, if the negotiation turns into a bidding war that forces Toronto to compromise their financial future, I'd rather see the team strengthened in a more strategic way. Bennett can be an important piece, but he cannot be the only solution to the Leafs' problems. Now, I want to hear from you, Leafs fans. Do you think investing heavily in Sam Bennett is worth it, or should the team look for alternatives? What would you do if you were in management? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Leafs News Fan Report for all the latest off-season updates.